This video is probably going to get me banned from all social media. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kwam Teasy with the Christocrats and the Red Pill Reality, here with another video for you guys to encourage believers to come out of the shadows and use their voices that God has given them to affect everything from pop culture to politics and everything in between with the gospel of Jesus, and not be afraid to stand up for what is right, what we know to be right, what is correct by the word of God, so that people can be brought out of darkness into his light, and we will be his representatives. We're not left, we're not right, but we are up. This video that I'm going to be talking about, we have to tackle the real issues that we're dealing with, and part of my job is to let you know what is on the horizon so that we can be able to be strong and stand up and stop losing ground to the enemy, and be able to represent Christ and represent God in a way that affects culture. We all know that Hollywood and the government and a certain section of people push for things that are not godly, and they call themselves progressives, that because they feel as though they always want to progress past tradition, and they call themselves liberals because they want to be open and liberal for everybody, and not be constrained like they think conservatives are, and they paint us in this box, in this picture, like we are the old fuddy-duddies and we don't want nobody to have fun and we want to oppress everybody, and that is not the case. The newest thing on the horizon that I'm telling you probably have seen little bits and pieces of, but I'm telling you is on the horizon, is the normalization of pedophilia. Pedophilia is now being attempted to be normalized, and it's coming in. That normalization is coming in through different arenas. One arena that is coming in to normalize young boys as being transgender or transsexual, or dressing up drag queen boys. You've seen pictures and heard about it, where they are sexualizing young little boys, and they've done it already done it with young little girls by these pageants that they have, that they over-sexualize the young little girls, and you've seen it, and you go on Instagram and see that, and just see the sexualization of children, and the normalization of sexualizing kids is disgusting, and they're pushing it, and they're pushing it and pushing it, and making it sound like if you are against that you are some sort of prude or phobe, where you're trying to oppress people. And then on the other side, you have science and the push for the normalization of pedophilia, meaning that, what I mean by that is they're trying to say, create a thing that says that pedophilia is a sexual orientation, that it is something that cannot be helped, that it is something that they are born with. Does that sound familiar to you? We got people who used to get on to Christians and believers and stuff, and conservatives, for talking about the slippery slope. And if we normalize this, they're going to start normalizing that, and they're going to start normalizing that. And you are seeing it now. So what makes me say this is there is a special out on Amazon Prime. It's a documentary called I, Pedophile. And it is a documentary that is trying to convince the viewer that pedophilia is possibly a mental disorder, but it's something that they cannot change, and we need to understand them as opposed to vilify the behavior. We need to understand them, and we need to destigmatize it, and so that we can help them get help. That is the first step to normalization. So you got on one side them wanting to destigmatize pedophilia because they can't help it, and then on the other side you got them normalizing the sexuality of young boys and young girls, and then you also have transgender people going into elementary schools and reading stories about being transgender, and reading stories about all kinds of stuff that little kids should not be exposed to. So what's going to happen? Right now, the biggest obstacle for pedophilia, if they would drill it down, is consent, because a young child cannot consent to a relationship, sexual or otherwise, that is romantic with an adult male or female, right? So it's consent. It's about consent. Well, here's how they're trying to do it. If a young person, a child, can consent to being, can think about and make their own choices as to what sexuality they are, something as strong as that, if they can figure out on their own at 4, 3, 4, 5, which gender they are going to be, then why could they not also consent to being with whoever they want to be with emotionally or sexually? Because they're able to figure that out on their own, right? And so eventually those two things are going to be tried to be married to one another, and they're going to change it so that pedophilia is no longer a stigmatized thing. Now, there's a precedence for this in history. Back in the Roman days, and Greek and all that, there was pedophilia happened a lot. You know, there was older men that would take younger boys and they would do what pedophiles do with them, and it was a normal thing. Like men in government would do that, and these are some of the reasons why socially the fabric of the Roman Empire collapsed. If you go through history and look at some of those empires in antiquity, they collapsed when they began to accept these things: homosexuality, bestiality, pedophilia. When they started to accept those things, then not too long after that, their societies crumbled to pieces, and somebody from somewhere else came and took them over. So these two things are being trying to be married together, and it's actually effectively happening. This is trying to be normalized, even in academia and in the halls of psychology. There is something called the DSM. It is a standard by which society decides what sexuality is normal and what's not normal. It's like a whole thing. And years ago, homosexuality was determined by the DSM as a deviant, and it was something that is abnormal, mental disorder, and through lobbying and through social pressure and through many things, the DSM declassified homosexuality eventually as that, and made it a normal thing, and as something that is normal, that because they cannot help it, because they are born with it, so to speak, or because they're born with it, so they say. And so now the same thing is happening. They're trying to declassify pedophilia as a mental disorder because they say they're born with it. And this documentary I was talking about, I, Pedophile, pushes that agenda. And now, how should we think about this as Christians? As believers, we need to vigorously stand up against that. So on one side, we have pedophilia. On the other hand, he also is going after our Second Amendment right to have guns to protect ourselves and our family. So you see how politics and political action and political knowledge is very important for us believers, because we're called to establish the kingdom, to protect the innocent, and to preach the gospel. And we cannot do those things, or it makes it much more difficult if it is now legal for certain things to happen that are dangerous and evil towards anybody and whoever it affects. So we need to be able to be active and aware of what's going on. And when the times come up to vote on these things, or when you see them being talked about in the media, you need to write your congressperson. You need to be vocal about it. And it may come to the point where you got to pull your kids from school. Because all these things are going on, and they will be put in danger. And it is the reason why they said that homosexuality should be normalized, or they try to normalize it, because it's two consenting adults that love each other, and who are you is none of your business. And then now with pedophilia, they're going to go after children being able to consent. Watch my words, mark my words. They're going to start to try to lower the age of consent to really low, because, like I said, kids that age, they think can decide their own sexuality, and then they're going to say that, well, we should not allow we should not stigmatize pedophiles because they can't help it. It is a sexual orientation, and that is it. So if someone who is attracted to young boys and young girls gets with a young boy or young girl who can consent because they can decide their sexuality, then who are we to judge them? We need to fight against it. It is vile, it is evil, it is wrong, it is abusive, and whether they call you hate-filled or have hate speech or whatever it is, we need to stand up for righteousness, for what is true. The Bible talks about what should happen to people who harm young ones, harm little ones, and God is not real excited about that. He's not cool with that. So this is a very kind of a hard video to deal with, but it is what's happening. It's what's coming up. It's what's on the horizon, and it's my job as a watchman to let you guys know what's going on so that we can fight against it and be strong against it and pray against it, this evil that we see is happening on our TV stations, everywhere we're seeing it. And this is why we need to be active, why conservatism needs to be pushed and active. All right, so that's all I got. Make sure you guys are paying attention. August 28th, we are launching our website. It is now here. August 28th, we want you to go to the website, join up. It's going to be thechristocrats.com. Join up. Even support us so that we can be pushed and we can go in places and do things that you may not be able to do, but we will be able to be that arm to represent the army of God, the emissaries of the kingdom of God. That's what we are. We're not Republicans, we're not Democrat, but we are those who represent the kingdom to establish his kingdom like our king told us to do until he comes or until we're not able to anymore. So go to the website. We got a lot of articles on there. We got a lot of things, a lot of resources for you. Join up, get some of the swag, get some of the gear, Christocrats all day, every day. And then we are going to invade Washington and let them know that the Christian voice has not been silenced. It's not going to be silenced, right? So we love you guys. Remember to love God, hate sin. Check us out, like, subscribe, share. And we're not left, we're not right, but we are up.